This is willpower. I am on top of the world with my red light panel behind me. Although I had it on, I can't have it on during the interview because I'm like too far away from it and I wouldn't be able to see your handsome face. I have Scott Kennedy from LightPathLED, red light guru, on the Willpower podcast today. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's so great for us to finally connect. Just at a deeper level to be able to share your story and this incredible tool that you've brought into the world. It's been over a year now since we've been chatting, talking, connecting. You've been so gracious as to always speak with my clients directly when they have big questions that I can't answer. And, by now, I'm a super fan of red light therapy across the board. But today, as I was just mentioning to you before we hit the record button, I'm excited to talk about your journey and the way that you are meticulously curating the panels and the lasers and the things that you are putting out on the LightPathLED platform, as well as giving listeners an understanding, because they're out there in the world. There's all these red light therapy options, just like why and how, and a little myth busting and understanding the best path forward for a few specific use cases for like when and how we get red light therapy in our lives. And so I know the thing I know a lot about you, but the thing I know the least about is like your upbringing into this world. Let's make sure today we talk about the campground too, because I feel like nature, campground, let's get into it. So more on that later, but I want to get a little bit of a taste of your background and how you leaned into this, the engineering feat that is creating these panels.
Well, it's boring, so I will try to sum it up really quickly. I was in the dental field. That's what I did in the military. Everyone says, "Oh, well, you flew planes." And I used to lie and say, "Yes, I did," to all. But yeah, I did dental hygiene in the military. And then I did that in the civilian world for a number of years. And I had to get out for a lot of physical lower back issues, neck issues, wrist issues, all the typical components of being in a static position, for 8-9 hours a day. So I started getting into doing training and teaching, and I was working with a dental laser company. And these were lasers that cut teeth. They cut soft tissue, but they also did photobiomodulation. And what I mean by that is if I took that same laser that would cut tissue and I put it right here, it would sear a hole right through the tissue. But if I pulled it out and allowed that energy to cover a greater surface area, then what we were seeing is great results with patients with TMJ issues, people that could just barely open up, had a lot of pain here. And we were using it for extraction sites. So after we would remove, say, a third molar, we'd go in there and we'd use the light, or periosurgery, or endodontics, or biopsies. And we found that the healing was dramatically quicker and the post-op pain was dramatically decreased. So there was a number of dentists who really thought outside the box. They weren't so focused on this, but they would treat their father who had shingles, or they would treat their kid who just sprained an ankle in a baseball game, or they would treat herpetic lesions. So they were taking a dental laser and using it for all different types of ailments. Even they were using it to thicken their hair. So,
wow. And this is like under the assumption, I want to make this assumption that they understood the usage of the laser from a proximity, or like widening the spectrum of light so that it wasn't going to be damaging. It was going to be beneficial.
Correct.
Because that's the thing. We want to make sure people are like, okay, if I put my face too close to the red light panel, what happens?
Right. Now, and we're talking about lasers with really, really high power. So you got to be more close to the tissue. You'd start feeling the heat and then the burning. And so you would know instinctively to pull it away. With LED light, it's extremely safe. So you don't have, you could literally lay right on your panel and you'd be totally fine. No issues at all.
Yeah.
So I started to learn more. I thought, wow, this is really, really interesting. So I started working with practitioners. I started working with other laser experts or light experts that had been in the field from the early 1990s, when it was really the start, even though we knew about light back in the studies with back in the 60s, and NASA did studies as well. It really didn't start taking off until the 2000s, but we had people that were out there doing light in the 1990s. And so, I leaned heavily on them. There's no light school, so it's all a lot of taking classes, taking courses, and then pulling up a lot of the research and just sifting. I've sifted through hundreds of research papers, and that continues to today. There's a lot of people out there that are so extremely knowledgeable when it comes to light. And so I have leaned heavily on those people to get me where I am now.
Yeah. And there's a profound amount of research, which is what's so exciting to me about this, because continually, I don't know if you have people come to you in the space and speak about this because they're understanding and maybe coming to you with excitement about red light, but just there still is a contingency of people that's like, but it's just red light bulbs, and there's so much. I think if I can just stress what you just said, that there's so many great minds around it, including yours. And there's so much research that it's like an undeniable, as long as you have the right quality and wavelengths and things that I'm sure we'll talk about, there is an undeniable shift that happens in the body for the better with red light. And I think, we're a byproduct of a society that's like, I can't see it, or I can't, And so do you still have people coming to you being like, there's not enough research. It's a, this is not a real thing. This is woo. Or do you not get that so much anymore?
Well, not so much. I think by the time people get to me, they've already, bought into it enough.
Yeah.
They've seen effects either from family or friends, or they listen to people like you who, they know that you're steering them in the right direction with their health needs, and you're not going to be selling them some miracle drug, miracle pill, miracle whatever.
Yeah.
But it's also really, it's although there's a lot of technology and there's a lot of science and it's kind of difficult to fully understand light, I tell people it's simply imagine photosynthesis with plants. I mean, plants can't live without sunlight. We can't live without sunlight. We go out into the sun, we get vitamin D. How crazy is that? Our hormones balance, our sleep, our circadian rhythm balances. There's way more things that we're learning about just from natural sunlight. So all we're really doing is through science found a handful of very specific wavelengths, found the correct power that our body really likes, and we were able to put that into a device. And you say, well, why did we need to put that into a device? Well, a lot of us live in northern climates that don't get sunlight all the time. We live indoors way too much. We have a lot of toxicities, either through environmental or through poor diet. We have a lot of stress. So we have all these environmental conditions that have kind of sadly evolved since our ancestors who, woke up to the sun. They went to bed when the sun went down. Their life revolved around sunlight. And so we've gotten so far away from that what we can do now, though, is we can take the wonders of light and do it very safely, very effectively in our own home.
Yeah, it's so cool. And it's just this mimicking nature piece. I mentioned to you this to you earlier, and exactly what you're speaking about is just getting out and being. I just came back from a trip to Amsterdam, and getting out and being in nature and feeling grounded and getting sun on my skin in the morning early and at intermittent parts of the day and sunset and sitting with human beings in nature 8 hours a day. And I came back feeling like a different person. I also will say this other thing that, may or may not resonate with you, and maybe it's TMI, but here we go, which is I'm having some like hormonal challenges, and my period was like waxing and waning in a way that wasn't, just my menstrual cycle wasn't aligning. And curiously enough, even though I'm working on getting out into nature in Austin or on the road, but was so much time in nature that my body finally was like, I can downregulate enough, I'm connected enough, and the sun is getting in my body enough that I think it just realigned my hormone profile. My like period came back normally, everything, and it's just like no surprise there. And also it's the great reminder of, oh, of course. And of course. So I don't know if that's a piece you can talk about. I have a lot of women I work with and a lot of people that are writing me in too, just about like hormonal. And when I say hormonal, yes, sex hormones and in general, all the other hormones in our body that are like having challenges with alignment, and how we apply red light in use cases where we're like, okay, great, I'm getting an hour outside a day, but I need more time. I need more light. And how you're seeing it affect the hormonal profile of people in that way.
Yeah. Well, they just did a recent study, control group that did their normal daily stuff. And then they had a group that would go out and be out in the sun. They'd, in essence, sunbathe for a certain amount of time. And their sex drives increased. Which,
yeah, let's have more of that. It's like
right.
If more people were having sex more often, we've had less challenges in the world, less fighting, less war.
Right. So their stress levels went down. Their hormones balanced. They were less likely to have any kind of, as far as men, erectile dysfunction type issues. They were actually able to perform longer as well. So all these positive effects from just being out in nature. So, it makes absolute sense. And what we know with the research with light is that, they've shown increased infertility for women who have gone years without being able to become pregnant. They did a really large study of about 700 women, and I believe it was in that range of about 26% were able to get pregnant within, I believe it was about a 3-month period.
Wow.
And that's just
external application of light, right? Not internal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just external. So, for someone who's tried for years and probably spent thousands upon thousands of dollars trying to get pregnant, here's a great option. So, yeah, for both men and women to balance the hormones, and also just not just that, but creating vasodilation in that area, relaxing any kind of nerve type issues that may be going on, increasing the lymph flow. All these things are going to be, not to mention, putting it on people don't realize how the system is connected, putting it on the gut, putting it on the brain, how it reduces inflammation and thus reduces depression type issues, reduces anxiety type issues. So much of our sexual dysfunction is not a mechanical aspect as it is a emotional, a mental aspect of it. So that's why I tell people, we can put light on a small area if we had a little arthritis, but I tell people, we want to really light up the entire body because it is a system that we're working with. So, and you may come in and say, well, I've got this specific issue and light can help address that. But, we all know we've got a load of issues, each one of us. So why don't we just light up the whole body and start working on a cellular level to help improve so many of these aspects of our life that just may not be functioning at a level that we want. Yeah.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about, I just want to break down a tiny bit of the protocols you mentioned, like the gut, like talking about applying to the gut and applying to the brain. Just like, is there what's the best way for someone to do that? It's like sitting closely in front of the panel. It's getting it more in your eyes. It's like, if you're like me and you have a ton of hair, if you're like you and you have a ton of hair, is it like a back of the head, scalp? How are we going to apply those things? And then, I will utilize the red light a lot on my gut, but I'd love for you to talk a bit more about that gut brain connection and an application of light But just it's like, this is the thing, right? This is, I think, the arc of the story of today for us is how do we get a panel? Where do we use it? How do we adhere to it, right? Because this is another thing that happens where people are like, I have the panel, I don't quite, like, I'm 10 minutes a day, but like what side and part, or is it more, or is it? So I want to, make sure that we're helping listeners out by, if they have one already, or if they're going to get a LightPath LED panel of some nature, like what is the way that's going to be the most successful thing? Like adherence is everything, as you know. And I just, I talked about having some of my clients who are entrepreneur females who are traveling around raising capital for their businesses and stuff, that they're like, their option is take the mini panel on the road because that's what fits in their purse. And then, it's definitely, you're going to run 10-minute cycles on several different areas because it's small, but that's the game for them as they're on the road. So that's what they can do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so could you speak a little bit about some of these protocols around gut-brain connection and utilizing the panels and, because there are people on social media just like laying down on the panels. And in some cases, maybe that's not always the jam.
Right. Yeah. So one of the keys with LightPath is we really focus on educating, because otherwise it's just going to become an expensive coat rack. Just going to sit in the corner and not be utilized. And that doesn't help the person. It doesn't help the family. And it certainly doesn't help me at all. So I put together a very interactive online manual with video and descriptions of how to utilize it. And then I do a monthly Zoom call with new users so that we can really get into depth with their problems. And I just have a lot of people that will just email me and say, hey, I'm trying to figure out how best to utilize it for this particular issue. So we go over that. So it's not one of those things where, like a lot of other places, whether you're shopping on Amazon or through other companies, where they care about you till they get your credit card, and then it's kind of like, bye.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I love about you is I'm always like, Scott, I don't want to bother you, but there's this one issue with eczema. Can we? And you're like, no problem. Here we go. Or here's a video. Look at the video, which is wonderful that you have some of those resources as well, because then you don't have to, you do it with love, but you also don't have to repeat yourself 4,000 times. But I saw the recording from that last call. So I love that exists in the world for people, because it is continuing to educate them. I think as people learn more about red light, then they go out and they educate their friends and they're advocating for it. And then that just spreads it even faster. So yeah, I super appreciate that. Can we talk about the manufacturing process a bit? I don't know if that seems exciting to you, but to me, when I have people who write me and say, oh my God, I found this red light panel with 42, vowels as its name, and it is like $400 and it looks amazing. It just, because it's so inexpensive, and I found it on Amazon and I'm just going to buy it. I quite often I'm like, hey, let's take a second, but what do people want to be looking for? Because there's a couple things in the story world of red light therapy. People will sometimes say, I hear in the biohacking community, all the light bulbs are coming from the same place. It's like, and the components and how they're put together. I know that you're, meticulous about the science on this and the way you want it to be locked and loaded as like, this is the best panel and this is why. So can you talk about where the foibles exist in the manufacturing process and how some companies are putting out materials that are just like way less expensive, almost at a place that seems like, could that really be real? And maybe it's not.
Well, yeah. I mean, I tell people, get what you can afford. So if that's a simple bulb off Amazon, go for it. It's something. It's a starting point. A lot of people can't, may not be able to afford LightPath, and I get that, and I'll steer them towards something that they can start with, even if it's something, like I said, basic, where they can just be using it on their lymph nodes to get the lymphatic system started. Anything is really better than nothing. That being said, when you get products through certain websites, and you may read a lot of great reviews, there's a grain of sand with that. I know I've had a number of companies come to me and say, hey, buy this product off Amazon, give it a 5-star review, and we'll refund your money. So that's a big problem. But yes, the material. So if you look at mine, at the whole casing is either iron or aluminum. That can help shield a lot of EMF radiation. It also is much more, just sturdy. Other companies may use plastic. They may use a kind of a clear cover on the front, which will often crack and warp. A lot of companies, they have such low power in their devices that they don't even need fans. So if you see a device and it's only about an inch in thickness, the power is going to be really, really low in that. And yeah, the bulbs can be very cheaply made that aren't going to be specific to a wavelength. They could be wildly off. The beam angle could, instead of it being nice and tight where the light is focused to the body, it could be spreading out. So you're losing a lot of light here and there. And then it's just longevity. It's, you get a device and it's less expensive and you're going to replace it in a year. You get a light that's inexpensive and you're going to get a 2-page manual, and that's about the only help that you're going to get. So you have to weigh that. You really have to sit down and say, and a lot of people, unfortunately, they come to me and they're like, I wish I had known about you. I got a device. I don't know how to use it. It's not working. I've got to send it back. They're charging me a huge restocking fee, whatever else. And I try to guide them as much as I can, but I can't guide everyone that, bought someone else's device. But we all have fallen for that. We all look for something that can save us money. And I totally get that. But when we're talking about health, we're talking about the well-being of you and your family. You need, and we're talking about something that is very new to people. We're not talking about, a vehicle where we know what does the power mean? What are all these, what kind of tires, what kind of engine, what kind of this? A lot of people know that stuff already. This stuff it's new to people, and they need someone to hold their hand through the process. So can they afford to buy a better unit and get that? Hopefully they can. But if they can't, again, you get what you can afford.
Yeah. And also, I will say, this is like shameless plug. And also, recently you guys launched a payment plan. And that is so nice, because I know that there have been some colleagues and friends and people have been waiting to sort of figure out how to invest in saving and getting it. And that's made life easier for them. And so it's a gift to be able to say, okay, over time, I can amortize this like health tool that really works well. And I mean, even things that are like I learned consistently and quite a bit from you, or, from Freddie, who's always telling me things. They get to me from him sometimes before from you, because he's excited, where it's like, okay, the bulb is great. And it actually is the wavelength that they say. And if the actual power to the panel is not strong enough, then it won't work as well. Is that a truism?
Yes, I would agree. And then we get into pulsing, and that's a whole different ball game right there. But so you could get a device for cheap that can work for you, maybe limited, but the key is it's not going to last, and you're not going to have someone there to help guide you.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about Nogier frequency? And you can just give us, I'd love the 101, 201 on that.
Sure. Well, we've got pulsing, which simply means, yes, you have your specific wavelengths of light. You see red. That's pretty obvious. Hence why people say red light therapy. But you also have near infrared, which actually penetrates deeper into the body, but is barely visible to the eye. So a lot of times it looks like those are the bulbs that are turned off.
If I had $1, if you had $1 for every time someone said half the panel's broken.
Yes, I get that. I get that quite a bit. Which is fine with me, because if I've got to troubleshoot a problem, that's an easy one. I can say that's normal. It's okay. You're fine.
Yeah.
So now that's most of the devices on the market use what they'll say a red and near infrared. They may throw out a nanometer wavelength. They may say 660, 810, 850, something like that. That's pretty consistent. Pulsing is simply turning on and off of the light, but at very specific frequencies per second. So it could be 2 times per second. So it's on, off, or it can be all the way up to 10,000. So now we have to decide, okay, so my device allows you to manually put in any pulsing frequency you want between 1 and 10,000. There's a very good reason for that. And that's because I don't know everything. And science does not know everything. And a lot of the research that we're just starting to find out is about pulsing and how it's more beneficial than just the non-pulsing that we typically see out there on the market. So when I put this together, Nogier, he's a French neurologist back in the 70s. He came up with specific pulses, electrical, that had a stimulatory effect on certain types of cells or ailments. Now, as we're starting to learn with science, whether pulsing is done with an electrical stimulus, a magnetic, a sound, or even now light, we're seeing a lot of connections between them. So although there's not a lot of science on specifically Nogier, I leaned again on my mentors who had been using these types of frequencies in wellness centers and having very, very positive effects. Mm-hmm. So I took the 7 Nogier frequencies along with ones that have been a little bit more diehard studied, whether that's 2.5, 10 and 40 for brain type issues or brain health. And so I put together 10 frequencies preset in my pulse panels. I mean, I could have done 50, but that would have been a little bit of an overload.
Yeah.
And the reason is, say tomorrow research could come out and it'll say 300 is the best pulsing frequency for this specific issue. Well, you can do that with my panel.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be cool. It doesn't have to be in the presets. So that way we just leave the door wide open to more research where it's not going to mean my panel is now antiquated and now you have to go out and buy another one. You're going to be able to use my panel for years and it's going to keep up with the research.
Yeah, so awesome. This is a big point of differentiation is the pulsation in the panel. So I have the large Pulse Pro and it is like, because then I can make the choice. I also like the choice. There are some days that I'm like, especially there are days that I'm like, my stress load is pretty high and I want to have like a fully relaxed experience. And if my eyes are closed, it's not that I'm not relaxed under pulsation, because it can be, working with my brain, working with my skin, et cetera. But if there are days that I just really want to be like super down regulated, even when my eyes are closed, there is a feeling of, that the pulsation is happening. And so I can decide if I want it off or on. I can decide what I'm using it for. I think I was saying to you, it's like 257, 253. I use the 2.5 one setting to 250 something. And I use the 40 hertz as predominant. I think along the way in one of our conversations or in something you sent me, I was like, oh, it's this 253 is for skin. And I was like, skin, that's aging. I'm in. But that is really nice to have that. And then also, just as a sidebar to anyone who's like delving into this, there is a certain pulsation rate at which you can no longer see the pulsation. And yeah. I was like, how come I can't get it to pulse on this number? But really it's pulsing. It's just not registerable in the visual spectrum to us, correct?
Yeah, well, it's going so fast. It's like a movie reel. A movie reel is actually broken down into a bunch of quick little pictures that go together so fast that the eyes can't detect it. So anything above generally 80 pulses per second, our eyes don't pick up. Yeah. Now I do 40. That's kind of my universal. But initially 40 annoyed the heck out of me. It just even though my eyes were closed, it was like boom, boom, boom. And it caused me stress. I've gotten to the point where I'm actually very comfortable with it now. Mm. It's actually quite relaxing to me. But yeah, I was in that same ballpark where I'd bring the pulse up to 147 or higher. And that way I was getting the benefits of pulsing, but without that constant flashing in my eyes. And there are certain people that if they have issues with strobe effect, like they went into a discotheque or they went into an old warehouse that had the old flickering bulbs.
Yeah.
And that caused you to either have some kind of a dizziness, vertigo, or even a rare group of people that have photo-related seizures.
Yeah.
Those are the people that just need to avoid and just go with non-pulsing, which the panel also has a non-pulse mode as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, though that's a rare group. Most people are like me, where that pulsing can just be a little bit annoying initially.
Yeah. It's cool though. It's good to keep applying it to be able to reset the system. And then more and more we talk about flicker rate with this like blue light bulbs and these things in the sky, in the ceiling at the offices and all of that. And people saying, "Oh, put on your slow-mo of your phone and look at the." So I just want to like discern between flicker rate and pulsation, that they are like two different things. And I think one, we're really talking about what negative light is doing to us versus pulsation rate, which is something that has got some more research. It's not the be all and end all yet, but yeah, it's you have a great blog on your website that sort of talks about the differences in whys and what's working in pulse light.
Yeah. So yeah, a flickering is very sporadic, and the body is used to having. I mean, everything in our body vibrates. Like we know why is it that 10 and 40 pulses per second has been so good for the brain? Well, we look at 10. And we've got alpha. All right. So that's where a lot of our brain vibrates at. 40, that's gamma. That's where our brain, when it's really alert and in action, that's where our brain cells are vibrating. And that's how they're communicating with each other. So it makes complete sense that we're creating a resonance with those cells. A recent research that is really fascinating. Now we delve just a little bit into the science. How is it working? Light enters the body into our cells. It's absorbed by the mitochondria, which if we go back to school, that's the powerhouse of the cell. Now, in school, we always see the picture of the cell, and we have all the nucleus and everything else, and then we have one little mitochondria. When in all actuality, we can have hundreds, if not thousands, of mitochondria in every cell. The cells that need more energy, like the eyes, that has the most mitochondria. Makes sense why light works really good for eye health. The second is the brain. Hence why we're seeing light being very beneficial for health, not just preventative, but for depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, they're now doing research on. So what we're trying to do, so the research showed that although red, as they had theorized, works on the mitochondria to increase the output of energy being produced by the cell, which leads to a whole cascade of positive effects for the body. The near infrared works on the water sheath around the cell, making it more permeable to allow micronutrients to get in, basically feeding the cell. And that is then creating greater production of ATP energy. What they found is that the pulsing of the light does that so much better than the non-pulsing. So they're all good, but we're taking it a step higher. So what we're really just doing is kickstarting the body to say, okay, let's feed the cell, let's get it to produce more energy, which has all these positive effects, including increased oxygen, increased vasodilation, gene expression, upregulation of good genes, downregulation of certain bad genes. So it's creating a really good balance with the body.
Yeah, so amazing. The big questions I always get around the body specifically are people sort of like, someone will be like, "Oh, I got my red light thing," and like I'll have a conversation with them, and then like we'll get off the phone and I'll get a text message that's like, men are asking me always like, "What's the protocol for putting it on my junk and testicles, and is it going to increase my?" The beautiful thing you talked about is like what in the beginning of our conversation is really that there is some like correction of ED and other things there, but I think it's probably Ben Greenfield, right, that made everybody be like, how am I going to shine the lights on my testicles and why and when? And is there like an approved protocol for that, or is it just like whole body? Because it's different tissue, right? I think it's like, just to put it out there, the big questions I get are like eyes. Can I get it in my eyes? Is it okay? Like how much is too much? on my testicles. And then I also get a lot of questions, especially coming out of COVID from women as well. Hair, like hair loss. There's a lot of hair loss that came in the 3-month hair cycle post COVID because the body stops making hair because it's trying to help fix the COVID, like not long haul necessarily, but the after effects of COVID, which I even saw myself. I was like losing hair by the clumps, and that's scary. And then of course men will ask about that and have been asking about that since the dawn of time, for baldness or whatever. So in those 3 areas, you have some tips, tricks, advice, research, or backing that is like some of this is good, some of this is bad. Don't fry your eyes out on your red light panel, etc.
Yeah. So there's been some misinformation about eye health because somebody will pull up a study on near infrared for eye health, and it's negative. But it was done on welders that were using very high power light for 8 hours a day. Ridiculous amount. And that makes complete sense. Where what we've seen with the studies on LED light has been nothing but positive on eye health. So it's one of those things. Yeah, we always ship out a pair of goggles just in case your eyes are overly sensitive. Maybe you just went through a surgery and maybe putting light directly on the eyes isn't the best thing at the moment. But basically, as long as your eyes, it's not so bright to where it's causing you stress, then I recommend to people to just keep their eyes closed. I mean, I can open them, but it's like looking right up at the sun. It's a little bit too bright sometimes. So I can always look down to the side. If
through the lid, I feel like I'm getting some light through my lid still.
Well, of course. I mean, you can, the near infrared is going right through the eyelid like it's nothing. And the great majority of the red is also going through the eyelid as well. So they've got some really good studies using pulsing. It was actually 292, not 250, but 292 is the one you want.
Okay.
On eye health, but they've got a lot of good research on age-related macular degeneration.
Cool.
Glaucoma as well. And here's why is when we talk about a lot of diseases, disorders, dysfunctions, there's an inflammatory component. And that's one of the best things that light does is it actually gets the cells to release anti-inflammatory proteins, enzymes that reduce inflammation. So that's why a lot of athletes use light both pre, because it increases the oxygen in their body. They can exert themselves harder, and post to reduce the inflammation. So I know the Nike running team, when the Olympics were down in 2016 in Brazil, they shipped a whole big bed in, like a tanning bed, but it was all good red near infrared light. Right. And they would use it pre and post workout.
So it's like pre to potentiate the workout with an oxygenation component. Is there anything else going on there besides the oxygenation, which I guess is going to boost ATP in some way, right? Because you're feeding the system more. Well,
yeah, like, they did a study, I believe it was the Chinese volleyball team. They were doing just curls. And so they had the sham group, which had a fake light, and then they had the real deal. And the light group was able to actually exert themselves harder, do more reps before they were just worn out. So what's going on? Yes, we have vasodilation. We have increased oxygen. We're also getting all the muscle cells, all the nerve cells, all the fascia cells to start pushing out more energy, communicating better with each other. So all that combined for a professional athlete, who really it comes down to a split second. It comes down to an extra inch, those are big differences. And in that Olympics, I believe it's the running team got more medals than they ever had in history. Now, can we point directly to the light? Well, that's a tough one, of course, so many variables in play, but certainly benefited them. And I've worked with a lot of people that are runners. I'm a runner as well, who after either treating shin splints, they had very quick improvement, or pre-marathon, where they inevitably always have IT band issues towards the end. We're able to finish very strong without any pain. So I've had enough of that anecdotal on top of the actual research that was done both with animal studies and human studies to know it's very, very beneficial for athletes, and very beneficial. I mean, the majority of my clients are people in their 40s, 50s, 60s that used to be active that haven't been because of injury, but they want to get back into it.
Hmm.
But they've got a chronic shoulder, chronic knee, chronic lower back. So this is where red light can be very beneficial, where everything else has been, popping pills, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And then from like a hair follicle standpoint, there's enough stuff being talked about in the world of sort of science and regeneration. And it's not to say, I always say to Freddie, like, how long do you have to wear the cap before your hair comes back? He's like, I'm probably beyond repair at this point. But I think from mitigating like things that were happening with COVID, or creating regrowth in situations where your hair is coming back. I don't know if that's like post chemo or whatnot, if
Right.
that even functions as well. But then also, if you're
Absolutely.
losing your hair young and you want to try to stimulate the scalp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a point of no return. Usually when the hair, when you look at somebody's head and it's shiny, that's kind of the end of it.
Yeah.
Majority of the hair follicles, they go into a dormant stage because, again, the body's got more work to do in other important areas. So let's talk about erectile dysfunction. We talked about vasodilation. So that's going to be increased blood flow to the penis. That's a good thing. Maybe it's a nerve involvement in the lower back. So we shine light on the back, reduce inflammation that could be pinching the nerve that sends signals to the penis to say, let's get aroused.
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, it's just anxiety, stress, depression, lack of sleep. So we start shining light on the head, on the back, on the neck to open up the glymph there, get the toxicities out of the brain, get the brain to function better, reducing the stress, reducing the depression. So that's where we talk about systemic, how important it is not to just shine light on what you think is the problem area. Hair loss, for example, can be related to kidneys, could be related to all kinds of hormones as well. So adrenal glands. So we're not just going to put light here. We're going to put light on that lower back area as well. So that's why sometimes, some of the initial studies with light were not as great as they are now because they didn't understand systemically how light works. And a great point is they used to do studies on, say you had two bad knees or two bad eyes. They'd say, hey, this is our control eye. This is our study eye. So they'd put the light right here. Both eyes would get better. So they would say, statistically significant, it wasn't there because one eye would get better, the other eye would get a little bit better to the point where the studies would say it's not enough of a difference. Same with the knee. They'd shine light on the knee, both knees would improve because we're getting the lymphatics to function. We're getting increased oxygen to the area. That not only works on that one area, but that travels through the rest of the body. So if someone came in and they had neuropathy in their feet, most people are going to say, okay, we'll just shine light on the foot, and they may have some success, some increased benefit, but then let's start putting light on the lymph node in the back of the knee, putting light on the lymph nodes in the groin area, putting light on the lower back for the nerve area. That's when you're going to actually start to see improvement in neuropathy issues.
So amazing. And so many people dealing with neuropathy too, just like various different health conditions and whatnot are coming out of this disease state successfully, but then they're dealing with the backlash of neuropathy. And this is such a strong point that I don't even stress enough, right? Because I'm always like, here's the protocol for your testicles. It's like the body systemically functioning, and you seeing this and knowing all this as well. There's different places that we can treat. So why not this is why I always make the call to say, hey, if you can get a panel in your life, get a panel in your life, because your whole body is going to respond to it. And maybe there's stuff going on in there at a deeper level too, that you don't even know about, that it's course correcting for you before there is an issue. And so that's, that's
and if you want to shine light on your balls, go for it. And,
I think it's like socially, it's like the ice bath in some ways, that it's socially like scandalous Instagram post, or I don't know, it's like it's the sensational thing. I always, I've loved red light since I was first exposed to it, pun intended. And I think that there is um, I think a lot of the interesting people come to me all the time saying like, well, Ben Greenfield was shining it on his balls. And I think women saw that and went, oh, is red light okay? Is this weird? This feels like cutting edge is a bit, but really it's just sensational, targeted, cool. And also systemically, you can use the red light for, everything that's going on in the body, the betterment of our overall health. So
Yeah.
it's just a cool point. It's really great to make, as well as understanding, how people can understand from the functionality. Like if you look at the bodies and what's doing what for what, what's the pathway
Mm-hmm.
for success, like you talked about with the brain. And this other thing I want to reiterate that you said that's just so, I mean, it's really timely, which is mental emotional strife, stress and cortisol, really the body's response to everything we're coming out of recently in the last couple of years, and also just more and more micro stressors every single day in our face, in our ear, in our eyes, nose, mouth, bodies, etc. Just applied levels of stress like we've never seen before, from the small vibration every 30 seconds of the phone. It's part of the reason I love sitting and chatting with people. And even though it's like we're not in person, but we're in person, is I get to turn my phone off. And even though I'm in front of technology, I really get to like see you and hear you. And so that mental emotional component is huge. So thank you for bringing that up. It is also, to me, correlation with, there's this other amazing thing that happens when you sit in front of a panel that isn't even 100% correlated with the red light, which is I get to have a moment of solace, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever I'm choosing for that day. I was telling you, and you already know that I have this modified bike rack that is so cool, so that I can lie under the panel when I want to utilize it that way and do breath work and lay down and really down regulate. And it's not something that I get to do a lot in a day unless I quite often have to like take myself by the shoulder and be like, okay, force yourself to stop what you're doing, get outside, or force yourself to stop and sit and do some breath work, and just really applying the stack of meditation or breath with the red light. It just gives my body the whole kit and caboodle of a down regulation moment,
Yeah. And
mental emotional ease,
I'm the same way. I just find time where I'm just like, I get up in the morning and I've got so much on my plate, and it's easy to bypass the light, but I've got to try to force myself when I can. It's one of those things. It's like going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Because you may not like the process part of it, but once you get in front of it and you're doing and you feel really good. But I really tell people, I say, get in front of the light first thing in the morning. It's a great way to start your day. You have that bit of peace. That means get up 15 minutes early, do it. I put on my breath work. I have a tough time meditating. My brain just keeps on going and going and going. But if I can do breath work, two birds with one stone, without a doubt.
Wow.
If you can even add in, binaural beats, all these things can be so beneficial, and the right way to start the day, as opposed to the first thing when you get up in your morning and you look at your phone and you turn on the TV and you're hearing all this horrible news and all these things going on in the world. And the body's response is to not realize that it's on the other side of the world. Your mind thinks it's going on here. So it starts to create all these stress hormones. So I tell people, try as much as you can to shut that stuff off and just try to get your light, try to get your sunlight in the morning as well. So different than you take a walk. We've got a new green panel. So it's green light coming out, which they've shown has been really beneficial for people with depression, migraine issues. And it makes sense. I mean, what happens when you go out in nature and you walk through a park? It's nothing but green. Do you feel better when you do that? Absolutely. Because our eyes are so used to being able to see green, and that creates relaxation for our body. So it's like those few easy things, grounding, whatever, that are relatively cheap, if not free, that so many of us just forget to do because we get caught up in the day-to-day, BS.
Yeah. And I think for me, what holds true is that I start to crave it. Like I notice if I missed the light. I notice if I didn't get 10 minutes outside in the early morning at like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, backyard style. And I notice if I don't get the time in the light, sometimes that's because I will stack it with coffee. And I'm on decaf even, but there's something about the ritual of making coffee in the morning. And, like I quite often am I, uh, you know, PJs ish in the morning, Freddie's like making a coffee in front of the light and we're like fighting over who's got light time. But I start to crave it because if I don't get it, then it sets up my day differently, right? If you launch right into that stress pothole, then it
Yeah.
sets up your day in a very different way. So yeah,
Well,
that's an important
from
piece.
personal experience, when I shouldn't be saying this, but I've gone a couple weeks without using my light. Just I get too involved in again, dumb things. But I will start noticing when I get up in the morning, I feel old. My back hurting, my shoulder is hurting. I feel kind of brain fog. And that reminds me, yeah, Scott, of course you're busy. What get some light. And within probably about 3 or 4 days, those problems go away. Even my neuropathy, which I had struggled with prior to using light, starts to come back, and I start to feel burning, tingling, numbness in my hands and feet. And that just reminds me, one, start using your light again, and two, stop eating ice cream.
Sarah, is that your vice?
Nah. That's my vice. Absolutely.
I love a good grass-fed ice cream. My body doesn't always either, but I notice, I don't know if you notice this, but I notice sometimes when if I have a treat like that, I'm enjoying it in the moment, but because I'm so clean in most of what I do that I can see the 3-year-old kid in myself that has the sugar. And then an hour later, I'm like, meh. I'm a little crabby or bitchy or frustrated or short fused. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so interesting. It's like the end of one experiment of applying that. And it's still so good in the moment when you're enjoying it. And then also response.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, when I'm feeling down, when I'm upset, when I'm tired, when I'm depressed, when things are going right, it's an easy thing to gravitate towards. And in that moment, it does feel good. But yeah, that next day for me, particularly if here's what I do is I eat something bad and I go, okay, well, my day's ruined. So I might as well just eat some more crap. And then I go the next day, well, I've got leftover crap from the day before. I've got to finish that. So then I ruin 2 days and then I ruin a week. And yeah, it absolutely affects me. I'm not one to be around when I've had too much carb and sugar in my system. I'm a complete grouch. I'm exhausted, not just tired where you can push through, but just you feel physically, mentally exhausted. And I know that usually comes when I'm eating poorly and I'm not getting my light.
Is there anything to talk about on the red light and glucose front? Just sidebarring on that?
They've got some positive studies on those with type 2 diabetes. I can be honest, it's been a while since I've really gone through those studies. So yes, it has benefit.
Yeah. And it's more like glucose management.
Yeah, here's what I tell people. And this is the issue that we get into with people wanting to sell things as the end all. That's not how it works. It's like taking your vitamin D. It's great to take supplements. You're not going to wake up the next day and go, I'm on top of the world. So someone that wants to increase their stamina, say they want to get back into shape, great, light will help. But they're smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Good luck with that. Good luck. Someone who wants to increase their health, but breakfast, lunch, dinner, they're eating cereal, pastas, breads, desserts, whatever else. Good luck. And those are the clients that I tell, sure, if you want to use the light, great, but don't expect things to miraculously get better until you start to improve your habits. And it's like, we can use light therapy. Again, this is oversold. along with wrinkles. Sorry. But we can be oversold on, hey, light for fat loss. Yes, there's studies that are positive, that are, again, statistically significant. There's a big difference between statistically significant in a study and reality significant when you look down at your gut or you get onto a scale. If you're not
supporting that in a massive way, and then I would say, like, why don't you go lift some heavy shit also?
right, but let's think about it. Okay, if we can increase oxygen, you can exert yourself harder. Let's decrease inflammation so you can shorten the recovery period in between workouts. Let's use light to help you sleep better. All right, you're going to wake up in a better mood. Let's use light to reduce your depression. Let's use light to increase your hypothyroid. Okay, now we're adding that in to our new habits of exercising and eating better. Then we're going to do really well off. But to say we're going to strap on some light and you're going to lose all this weight, that's not something I'm going to sell you on.
Yeah, that's like marketing. There's a lot of marketing in the world around, this is like the marketer's job, right? But also overselling in that way. Wrinkles are a common thing that people will come to me and say, hey, and I'm like, well, what else are you doing? Are you out? Are you smoking? Are you this? Are you that? Like, what other stressors you have in your life? Which potentially also is like the down regulation, like we just talked about, sitting in front of the panel and having some more calm time, and all of that can help. It's the same thing as like in the world of collagen. If I have one more woman come to me, and it's mostly because I work with women, I'm sure men do this in some regard too, but being like, I spend like $900 on collagen every month powder, and I put it in every drink I have. And it's like, at some point it's helping your bones and joints in some way. And it's not the wrinkle miracle that modern marketing has made it out to be. And so, it's like a great point. It's like, what are your lifestyle changes? If and as people are going to invest in a panel, it's also nice. I think one thing begets another in some way too, right? If you set up more ritual in your day where you're like, well, I'm going to make some eggs on greens, and then I'm going to sit in front of my panel, or I'm going to have a decaf coffee or tea or coffee or whatever people are doing, but like they're trying to fix better habits within their rituals throughout the course of the day. So, getting that baseline. It's a lot of what we talk about here on the Well Power podcast too, is getting the baseline right. And then what tools can we layer in? Although I will say that when people say, if I'm getting a device, what's the device? Because, biohacking is sexy, and health optimization can be like sexy when it's like injecting things and getting devices and strapping things onto you and all of this stuff. And I always say, like, the lowest hanging fruit, the smartest first investment, if you're going to play in the space of the technology or the equipment or the gear, is like, get a panel, get red light, because it's so many usage occasions. And also, like you mentioned earlier, you have this green light, which I think I knew about, but not like wholeheartedly. So that's great to mention that. And then I know you have a blue light as well, because I've had some people who are dealing with skin, and that blue light seems to be like a good solve for that.
Yeah. Well, blue light, it's a simple one. It creates excessive reactive oxygen species, ROS, which, in the long term, we don't want for our body, but in short spurts, that reactive oxygen species helps kill acne-causing bacteria.
Yeah,
it can work with other types of skin ailments as well. So we've had really good success. I wish I had that around when I was a teenager, because I went through Accutane twice, erythromycin, tetracycline, doxycycline, everything. And if I wasn't just having like nosebleeds, I was running to the bathroom every 30 minutes. Putting so many toxins in the body. But I've had people that have gone years. I had a nutritionist, who knows everything about diet and exercise and everything else. No success. Did blue, red, near infrared light, and night and day. And she's kept that going for, I think she's on like 2 years now.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's understanding light, understanding the research. Over 7,000 studies now have been done on light, and we're now getting more involved in the different colors, whether it be the blue, the green, other wavelengths further up in the near infrared, and then the pulsing. So I think what science needs to do is they need to continue and they need to get better ways of being able to study, like being able to use maybe heart rate variability, or there's other types of tools that are coming out that can detect certain changes in the body that aren't necessarily related to, having to dissect, look under a microscope or take blood work or hair samples or other types of things. I think we're just going to see it. We're going to see, I think, in the next 5 years, light's really going to take off because the studies are going to be really conclusive.
Yeah, so cool. Can we just talk? I always have a couple of questions I like to wrap up with, but I want to just speak to this one piece briefly because it is a curiosity that I always have about, like, is there a too late in the evening to utilize red light before sleep?
No, I mean, and there's one guy, Michael Hamblin. If you ever get a chance to look him up just on YouTube, he's funny to listen to. He is one of the leading fathers of light therapy. What I really like about him is he has no problem saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is a guy that does the studies. He knows the ins and outs. And there's many times where he says, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. We haven't gotten that far yet in science. But he loves to use light when he wakes up at 3 a.m. because it helps put him to sleep. Now, there's some people that initially it gives them a boost of energy. So at nighttime, it may not be the best for them. But I tell people, you know what? This is why I like pulsing. So I like 40 hertz in the morning because that's the gamma. Let's wake up. Let's get going. The lower pulse is like 10, or even we can do less. I had somebody just emailed me. They're like, I love doing 2.5 because now we're getting into the theta brain wavelengths. And he's like, I love using that at night. It just calms me right down. I can sleep really well. So there's a little bit of, hey, everyone's a little bit different, but I have no problem with someone using it in the evening. And let's also go back to the ancestors. Morning lights, so good for our body. A study showed that getting light on the eyes between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. is hugely more beneficial than doing it any time of the day. They couldn't figure out why, but they theorized that's how our bodies are used to getting up in the morning, is with sunlight. So it would make sense to be using it in the evening, kind of as the sun goes down, because that's when that's when the light is going to be more healing. And this way we get the benefits of light without all the negative, UV, which, let's be real, we all need the UV. I tell everybody, go out, depending on your skin tone, depending on where you are in the world, go out and get your sunlight. Get it without any sunscreen on. Try to wear as little clothing as you can get away with in your neighborhood. But so I think it's perfectly good to use it in the morning. I think it's perfectly good to use in the evening. I think it's good to use anytime during the day. Everyone just needs to understand their body may be a little bit different, and they may be a little bit different initially. And then their body just tends to go, okay, this is light. It's coming in. It's good for me. I'm going to calm down.
Yeah. And it's like re-regulation period. I think that's always worth it. I see that a lot of things I biohack, or, I'm working to like optimize, is like, how am I re-regulating the dysregulation that I have? It's like like you said, one serving of the supplement isn't going to change the whole game. So it's like, how do I re-regulate what I'm doing? And it may take a little time. It's like that same thing we talked about with light and me saying, if I'm closing my eyes, it's flashing. Is it causing more stress? Mm-hmm. So it's super cool to have that conversation. Cool. Cause lots of people come to me about sleep things, and there's just always a moment where I'm like, well, how late is too late? Is there too late? And that sort of gives us some insight into it. Amazing. So I like to kind of wrap up and ask this question, two more questions for you that I think are like, what's exciting? What's coming? I know that you're a bit of a tinkerer and like engineer brain and all of that. And it's like, what's coming for you besides a campground experience for all of us who can come to your campground and get outdoors more, which is super beautiful. What's in the pipeline for like red light and everything with LightPath LED that you're most excited about?
Well, with the campground, this is our first year and we're just trying to survive.
Mhm.
Next year, just
Where
depending,
is it? Tell us where it is.
it's Cooperstown, KOA.
Cool.
So right in upstate New York. Beautiful. It's peaceful. It's quiet. It's green. Our neighbors are um, cows and corn. Awesome. So what I'd like to do is I want to bring in light here. I want to bring in sauna. I want to bring in breath work. I want to bring in yoga. I'm setting up some of the yurt or bell tents, and I like every one of them to have light in them. So, so people can come for a weekend or a week of not just the great outdoors, but really come for healing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's coming. I don't know when, but it's we're going to survive this season first, and then we're going to sit down and we're going to look at what we can accomplish for next season, and then the next season. So we're going to go in some phases. But I love the idea of people being able to have this be their healing destination, and then go see the Baseball Hall of Fame. Because it's awesome. So there's so much to do up in this area with nature. So it was like the perfect place to purchase a campground. Is really the perfect place to set up a campground / retreat, so that you can, if you want to bring your RV up, if you want to stay in a cabin, great. If you want to stay in one of our tents, great. Eventually I want to have hobbit holes, so I want to have a hobbit hole, what they call earth homes.
Yeah.
Little community of earth homes, so, things that are very good with the environment, that are a little bit unique to the camping world.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's very exciting. I did a lot of events at a big campground in New Hampshire for a while, and it was like interesting to see the highs and lows and plight of the campground owner and how he managed everything, and how just upkeep and keeping people outside, and yeah, really it's a beautiful I'm sure it's like entrepreneur life in some way as well, but it's a beautiful thing that you're uh, providing and sharing with people as like more outdoors, more healing in general, between the panel and the campground. So
Mhm.
I close the podcast with a similar question to everyone, which is really about you going back to your younger self. And if you could have a conversation with, you know, 14, 15-year-old Scott Kennedy and give him one piece of advice on how to step more powerfully into his wellness for the rest of his life. Maybe this is a piece of advice for you, your younger self, or also for any newer listeners that are really trying to figure out wellness. What would that piece of advice be?
Well, if I could go back to that age, I would say stop being such a freaking idiot around women. Uh, Maybe I wouldn't have been 25 losing my virginity. I'm kidding, but too much information there.
No. Well, what were you doing around women? Do you feel like you were like nervous around them? Are
Oh,
you
I
like
was so
shy or?
awkward. I was a little scrawny kid. I was tiny. I mean, I didn't get tall until 12th grade.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I was so awkward. Right come 7th grade, when all of a sudden people are judging, it's now a matter of who's wearing the cool clothes, who's doing the cool things, who's got the cool jewelry, and I grew up in a family of 6 kids where, I was the youngest boy. So I got hand-me-downs from 8 years earlier. So I was wearing white corduroy pants when white corduroy pants were not cool at
You
all.
were like trying to bring back the trend.
Yeah, I was, so yes, if I could go back in time, as far as wellness is concerned, I found my passions later on in life. I found running, doing marathons, ultras in my mid 30s. I found boxing, later on in life. I found this later on in life, where I grew up with Western medicine,
Mm.
which, hey, there's always a balance there. But, I think there's a lot of things in my life that I had to go through the awkward parts. I had to go through the tough times to be able to be where I am and not take it for granted. So, you know, again, growing up with 6 kids and trying to struggle to make ends meet, and, you know, finding out how my parents had to really struggle to make ends meet. You know, I don't take leftovers for granted anymore.
Mm.
You know, I don't take, you know, being able to be outside for granted, you know, anymore. So, you know, life has a purpose. It's all a matter of how you, you know, decide to perceive it. Not to
Yeah.
mention, not to say I don't go through a lot of struggles in life. I don't go through a lot of stresses. I don't go through a lot of anxiety. I don't go through a lot of, you know, repetitive thought process that drives you insane. But it's finding a better balance.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the story about you and the women when you were younger, because I think it speaks a bit to this like attitude is everything. You know, this is like, it's not about necessarily, you know, the Lamborghini or the cool clothes or the whatever, right? It's a bit about how you walk in the room as the person that you are. And
Absolutely.
I see that, you know, you and I have never had the great pleasure of meeting in person. We've done a lot of phone calls and text threads and video and things like that. But it's, you know, the attitude that you bring to the community of red light therapy, health and well-being is just remarkable. And I'm very grateful for that. There's someone in the space and playing in the red light panel space and red light space in general, red, green, blue light, all the lights, that has such integrity and that is so willing to educate and share information and finding scalable ways to get people more insight on how to utilize these tools to just better their lives and better their mental emotional condition, better their state, so that they can walk through the doorway in a Hanes t-shirt and be like, hell yeah, I'm a pulled together badass person and you should be interested in, you know, let's connect because we can do miraculous things together. And I think yeah, I want to honor you for that. I want to give you some gratitude for always being so available and so caring with the way that you treat the business.
Well, thank you. And I'm still awkward.
Listen, let me be the judge of that. I'm still awkward. Whatever. We all got a little of that. Just keep it a little. I'm in Austin. It's like we're trying to keep it a little weird. Cooperstown might be the same.
Absolutely.
Oh, Scott, it's just a real pleasure to spend time with you and that magical, beautiful brain of yours, sharing all this information with us and just sharing really the best made panels on the market, red light therapy. And we'll have to come up and check out your campground soon. So it's been a pleasure spending this time with you today.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, love.
Bye.